Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing, non-profit, educational, or personal use, tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, guys, this is kind of interesting. So this is Tori Magoo, or Tori Chrisman, and Arnie Lerna talking about, Arnie's talking about how he basically, Scientology operatives came into his home, similar to other ABC agencies, but what do I know, and then put L.S.D on his toothbrush. So let's listen to see what he's got to say. He was going to court against Scientology.
Thanks for coming by again. It's Tori and Arnie for part 3. I'm going to interview them on the second part of the raid. So why don't you tell, it's kind of an amazing story, but why don't you tell them what happened?
An incident, well, the Scientologists had a plan. At least this is what I think their plan was. And I'm going to tell you the plan and then tell you what occurred.
Okay.
Their plan was to overwhelm me with the raid so I'd be in shock, and then place L.S.D and some other kind of drug somewhere in the house so that I'd be tripping my brains out for a couple of days maybe, because they had filed with this ex parte motion a motion for accelerated video deposition on Tuesday.
I do need to go and look up what ex parte motion means. I keep hearing this over and over. Excuse me. When I'm listening to other channels. So, anyways, let's go here.
It was Saturday of the raid, so Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. They wanted me here on their version of YouTube.
Which would have been what?
Which would have been a deposition video.
Okay.
But they wanted me to be a raving lunatic, having been up for a couple of days roaring on acid.
Wow. And this was what year again?
This is 95.
Oh, 95?
This is in 1990.
Also, I just wanted to bring up, you guys will find it interesting, the interactions that he had with the LAPD. I know what I think.
95.
Okay.
What happened was, on that Saturday night, I didn't brush my teeth. I still have them, but I didn't brush them then. And on Sunday night, I did. But for some reason, I started using just a very little bit of toothpaste. And I brushed my teeth, and I got in bed. And I used to listen to these meditation tapes to decompress and go to sleep because they just knock you out. And I put the headphones on, and I'm listening to the tapes, and I couldn't deal with listening to the tape. I ripped the headphones off in a panic, just the way they...
Wow.
These are tapes that normally it's like 10 minutes of this, and they're out cold.
I always like how Tori, interviews / talks with people. She always gives people a chance to talk.
Anyway, but I couldn't listen to them. They were intolerable. I'd never experienced anything like that before. And I thought, what's going on? What's going on? I was starting to panic. Well, I could understand being a little anxious about the events of the previous day and facing off against a multi-billion dollars cult in U.S. federal court and not even having your computer to call you guys and ask for help. And, however, while laying there, after pulling off the headphones, it was about 9 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I'm looking up at the ceiling, and I start seeing stuff moving around. And this wasn't like mushrooms where things wiggle. This was like things in the air moving around, glowing patterns.
Like hallucinations.
Hallucinations.
Oh.
And they were somewhat LSD-like, but there was a little difference to them. But there was something particular that I noticed, because for me, luckily in the 60s, I went to Woodstock, and I took LSD a few times back then, and I had a great time. But in the center of the palms of my hands, I recall a certain particular feeling.
Oh, yeah, right.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
I also remember a particular feeling in another part of my body, which I won't mention.
Talk about it.
And
But you can imagine.
it was unmistakable, because I hadn't experienced this combination of the thing here and the thing there at the same time in decades.
See, that's good that he had had that experience. Had he not had the LSD experience, he wouldn't have realized what they had done.
But luckily I took LSD in the 60s, and that saved my life, because without that I would have thought I was going crazy.
Yeah, you would have thought you were nuts.
I mean, I thought I was going nuts. But there was something else in it that was very unpleasant, too. But I just took a little bit of it, all right?
Right.
But had I used the full thing, the full glob of toothpaste, because I just used this little tiny smidgen, you know?
Right.
Had I used a full glob of toothpaste, considering what the little smidgen did for me, I would have been up for days.
Right.
Now imagine what I would have looked like during that video interview after tripping my brains out in a state of paranoid schizophrenia, or with whatever else was it mixed in with this mix.
It kind of reminds me of that whole, I don't know if you guys have ever gone to research that whole, I forget what it was called, but it was like this LSD experiment on this scientist. It was like a mind control experiment on this scientist without his knowledge. I believe he was a Scientologist. And you can look it up online. And he had and they gave him LSD without his permission. I believe they put it in his drink or something. I think it was the CIA or one of those agencies. And unfortunately, this guy, he became so psychotic and out of his mind that he jumped out of the building, allegedly. I mean, we don't know for sure. But it was like a really tragic story. And I just found that kind of interesting, that that's one of the drugs they like to use.
To try to make me crazy, perhaps some extract of Jimson weed.
Right, or something.
Or something. I don't know. I mean, I know for sure it had LSD in it.
Right.
And I know there was something else, but I couldn't identify it.
Right.
And then I called the police. Well, I called a friend of mine who was a constitutional lawyer who'd come over earlier, explained what was happening, and he said, well, call the cops. So I called the Arlington County Police. The guy come over. I explained what's going on, and you have to understand I'm tripping a little bit, okay?
Do you guys know what county Arlington is? This must be in California. So I'm just wondering if Arlington is just close to Riverside, which is where I believe Los Angeles is located.
I didn't make a really good convincing argument of this.
Right there. Alex is here. Alex.
Okay, we're almost done. We'll be there.
I didn't make a really good convincing argument of this, considering the condition I was in. And the police explained to me that they couldn't do any kind of tests unless they actually had somebody in custody. And that
the police cannot do tests unless they have someone in custody, which that's fair enough, because police do have procedures that they have to follow. But let's just say I find it interesting.
It would cost $750, and they weren't willing to do it at the time. And
They're on TV.
and we just had guest stop by,
Yes, some guests
right
just
in the middle of this. I guess we need our own production facility.
Yes.
But That was Scientology's plan. They wanted to get me all messed up on L.S.D. and get me on a video deposition after tripping my brains out for 3 days, so I could discredit myself or be in a panic or settle with them and sign documents that I was a evil Markabian intruder from another dimension.
That's always the key, is to discredit. Number one, discredit. And then, as he is talking about coercion, to coerce him into signing documents he doesn't want to sign. And you have to wonder how many times they had actually done that successfully. And who was working in OSA at that time? You know, just wonder. It does make me wonder who actually put the LSD in the toothpaste. Because if that is not an indication to you that you are participating in criminal activity, I don't know what to say. And then you think about all of these dogs that have been poisoned. And then the more recent was during the Masterson trial, I believe it was the, what do you call that? The prosecutor, Los Angeles County prosecutor, that was almost run off the road. Wouldn't that be enough to get after Scientology? You'd think, right?
And they utterly failed at that.
And they utterly failed at that because what they had not anticipated was that 2 weeks prior to posting this document, my friend Lawrence Wollersheim, who had a judgment against Scientology after a lawsuit for intentional infliction of emotional duress for $5 or $10 million.
Right, which he won.
Which he ended up winning. But
despite them saying not one thin dime for Wollersheim, he won.
He ended up getting
million.
His money.
Right.
All right?
I really want to look more into the Wollersheim case because that set a precedent, and I have to wonder why there haven't been more cases that were modeled after Wollersheim. Of course, Scientology is going to get all of their, as many lawyers involved in a case like that because they don't want any precedent set. As we can see in all of the child sexual abuse cases that they fight tooth and nail about. And slowly but surely, even though it looks as if there's no wins or no successes with the child sexual abuse cases, there are right now small wins that nobody is seeing. So sometimes justice does not look the way you want to see it, but there are things that are happening behind the scenes or small little changes being made that are justice for victims.
He no longer fights Scientology very much anymore, and frankly, I don't blame him after everything he'd been through. Right. Anyhow, on the Monday after this incident, I ended up at the law firm Hogan and Hartson, and they made arrangements and talked to the lawyers. They asked Earl Cooley during the interviews, "Oh, Mr. Cooley, do you still want Mr. Lerma at this video deposition tomorrow?" And Earl Cooley says, "Oh, no, never mind, forget it. We'll reschedule it." All right? Because now I had Hogan and Hartson, and I wasn't all screwed up.
Right.
And they didn't know that Lawrence Wollersheim had asked me to be a director of FACTNet, FightAgainstCoerciveTactics.org.
And if you haven't gone there, check it out. It has tons of information.
And he had $1 million in liability director's indemnity, and $1 million of litigation insurance.
Right.
And the Scientologists were not pleased because the 6-inch brief they had written was intended to bowl over some guy who would try to fight them pro se after getting on video deposition, tripping his brains out, and try and explain all of that to a judge.
Right.
And the final the great thing about this whole case is they tried to settle it 3 times. Each time the numbers got bigger. First it was just like 10,000 and it goes away, but we seal the case. Next time it was like maybe 50,000 chump change and we sealed the case. I mean, these guys sued me.
Right.
And they're asking to settle it and pay me.
Right.
As long as we seal the case.
Right.
So that
and
you
nobody
guys,
can know.
Right, so nobody can know.
Right.
I mean, we ended up beating them on their trade secrets. Well, that's after they had added the Washington Post to the lawsuit for writing one of the articles. It's linked from here. And so we beat them on all their trade secret claims. And the judge, because of their conduct and because of the statutory nature of copyright law, sort of had her hands tied. She had to find me guilty of 5 counts, non-willful infringement.
Right.
Oh, and speaking of those 5 counts they found me guilty of, those 5 counts weren't even for the thing I posted that they used to get the raid, the Xena story. It was for some other rubbish that they found while searching my hard drive. Okay. Because they...
I don't even understand how something like that would be legal, but any other legal experts or lawyers or judges might be able to explain to me how that can happen.
They didn't even want to go near that issue.
Yeah, they never want to say Xeno even.
Yeah, Xenu, Xenu, the evil, the way the quote, and the judge confirmed this whole thing as being true, which...
So that means if you guys ever have to go to court against Scientology, everyone, yourself, and your supporters should all be wearing some kind of Xenu t-shirt.
The whole point of this, this litigation, for me anyway, was so that it would be true and they'd never be able to say, well, we don't believe that.
Right.
And so we have U.S. Federal Judge Leona Brinkema. Thank you, Judge Brinkema. Good job.
So anyways, guys, I will leave the link in the description. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.